Welcome back again. This is the second lesson on how to read Malay. So previously we learned about how to read Malay based on the Sebutan Baku, which was the standard way of pronouncing words in Malay. But today we'll look at how Malay speakers tend to speak Malay naturally. So this is what we call the common pronunciation or Sebutan Biasa. And let's have a bit of a background of what Sebutan Biasa is. So basically, it's actually like an accent, but it's actually based on a certain region in Malaysia and also some parts of Indonesia. So it's based on the dialect spoken in Johor Riau. So Johor is at the, you can see here, at the southern part of Malaysia. And Riau is basically all of the islands, which is between the Indonesian island of Sumatra and the peninsula of Malaysia. Yes, and also it does include parts of like eastern Sumatra as well. So in Malaysia, it is sometimes considered as a common neutral accent. If you were to speak this using the Sebutan Biasa, this common pronunciation, you can't really tell where you are from. So basically, like you can't tell if you're from Kedah or you're from Kelantan or any others, regional dialects. So this is why we kind of consider it to be neutral. And what happens is that speakers of different regional accents often resort back to this pronunciation, or sometimes they would use Sebutan Baku, but usually they would use this common pronunciation or Sebutan Biasa when they speak to each other, so that they can understand each other. Next, this accent, this dialect is commonly spoken in Peninsular Malaysia, in Singapore and Brunei. So those are the three main regions. But then when you talk about Malay, speakers in Sabah, Sarawak, Indonesia tend to have a more standard pronunciation. Their pronunciation is much more in Malay Baku, although not entirely, but they tend to follow a much more standard way of pronouncing things. While other parts of Malaysia, like in Peninsular Malaysia, we tend to have you tend to use the Sebutan Biasa, although this kind of neglects the fact that you also have to know that each state in Malaysia or Indonesia even uses their own dialect, has their own dialect. So a thing or two about native Malay speakers is that there are some key features that you can tell how Malay sounds like. First and foremost, when you speak, is a bit of a lazy talk, I would say. I mean, we don't tend to stress every single word, so we have some sort of a softer tone, and it sounds more casual. Secondly, words are often slurred, get contracted or simplified. For example, like in the word berapa, meaning how much, we tend to say berapa, just without the berapa. So the sound gets dropped, and so it's contracted. And words like 10 sen get slurred about. So instead of saying 10 sen, which is a bit lengthy, it's a bit mouthful to say, so you would just say 10 sen. And the third part is that final syllables of the words are unstressed. So you would find in common pronunciation, how we commonly pronounce things, the last syllable gets unstressed, so you would change the sound of that vowel. Last but not least, consonants like B, P, T, and K at the end of the words are unreleased. What I mean by unreleased is that you do not let go of that sound at the end. For example, in the word darab. See, I say darab and I didn't say the b sound. I didn't let go of that a in my mouth. So I just say darab. And words like, for example, kerap and darat and also ra. This sort of pronunciation where the consonant at the end of the words are unreleased is also present in the standard Malay pronunciation. So it's not limited to just how we pronounce things. Although you can kind of pronounce the B like darab, but then again, this is not a natural way of saying things, even in standard pronunciation of Malay. So the main difference in Malay pronunciation is the schwa ending for the letter A. So in Sebutan Biasa, the letter A at the end of a word is usually pronounced with an unstressed sound, such as in emak. So here I have like an example. So the standard way or the baku way of pronouncing Malay is, for example, this sentence: you would say, saya rasa gembira kerana saya ada ramai kawan. But that is basically the standard pronunciation. So commonly you would say, saya rasa gembira kerana saya ada ramai kawan. You can see that the letter A becomes an sound. So A becomes So saya becomes saya, rasa becomes rasa, gembira becomes gembira, and kerana becomes kerana. This is a common way of us pronouncing the letter A at the end of each word. So it's a very, very general rule. Although there are some exceptions, although not much, that some words that ends with an A did not become a schwa. So a schwa is the sound that's a schwa. So for example, the word anda does not become under. Yeah, it doesn't become anda, it becomes anda. And also words like duta, zina, riba, and lawa. So all of these words retain their a sound. And there are also some words which, instead of retaining it, you would add a K at the end. So, for example, instead of saying buka, you say buka. Pula becomes pula, and juga becomes juga, and bawa becomes bawa. So, these pronunciations are common when you listen to Malay people speak. These are this is the major difference between standard Malay pronunciation, the baku pronunciation, and also the common pronunciation. The next difference that we will look at is the sound of U and I in the final closed syllable of a word. So what's a closed syllable? It's basically a syllable which ends with a consonant. So for example, in the syllable, for example, in the word laut, the syllable U and T, ut, is a closed syllable. And for example, a closed syllable is the syllable ir in the word air, and pang in the word kompang. So the syllable ut, ir, and pang are closed syllable because the syllable ends with a consonant. And in typical common Malay pronunciation, when the final syllable in the word is a closed syllable and it has the vowel I or U, the I tends to have an E sound, while the U tends to have an O sound. So let's look at some examples. See, you can see the word laut becomes laut. Nyanyu in standard Malay becomes nyanyo in common Malay. Jauh becomes jauh in common Malay. And the word ratus becomes ratus. And also that covers for the sound U. And when you have the letter I in the closed syllable at the end of the word, so that becomes air. For example, in this word, air becomes air, sakit becomes sakit, tarikh becomes tarikh, and baring becomes baring. The third and final major difference would be how Malays would say the letter R and K and H, the H sound. So the letter R at the end of the word is unstressed. Like I said, common Malay, like the last syllable is often unstressed. So what you tend to hear is that the R is dropped and it becomes like a long vowel. So for example, the word ular, meaning snake, becomes ular. Bayar in standard Malay becomes bayar, and sukar in standard Malay becomes suka in common Malay. Next, the digraph h or kh either becomes k or h, depending on how much you stress on the words. For example, the word kamis, hamis actually, so that becomes kamis. And also you can see that the letter I becomes an e sound. So hamis becomes kamis. Hayalan becomes just hayalan, or some people would also say kayalan, but commonly Malays would say hayalan. And khawatir becomes kwate. So again, the letter I becomes an e, and also the letter R becomes like a longer vowel, so kwate. So khawatir from standard Malay becomes kwate in common Malay. So like I said, we have two pronunciation, or like two ways of Malays pronouncing things. There's the standard pronunciation, which is Sebutan Baku, and also the common pronunciation, which is Sebutan Biasa. Again, we use both pronunciations in both situations. In many situations, we use both pronunciations, but it depends on what kind of situation. For example, these are the lists on when we would use the standard pronunciation, and on the right hand side is when we use common pronunciation. So let's look at them one by one. When you use sebutan baku, you tend to use it when there's a public speaking or debate competition. So this is from my experience. I tend to hear them only using standard pronunciation when there's a debate or like public speaking competition, because in that sort of competition you would want them to speak as clearly as possible and with much gravitas. So that's what sebutan baku, the standard way, is. It has much more stress in it. While if you look at the sebutan biasa, it's often used during any public speeches where you tend to sound more casual or more relaxed. So that's why you would hear, even though in a formal event, you don't hear people using the standard pronunciation, you would tend to hear them using common pronunciation, the sebutan biasa, because it is much casual. It doesn't sound as jarring, I would say. Next up, you would tend to use sebutan baku when you sing or when you read a poem or something. So this is a bit interesting because it sounds as if like you would have, when a Malay who tend to use the common pronunciation, sebutan biasa, but when a Malay person sings, he or she would say or would use sebutan baku instead, because I think that's because sebutan baku has a very, when you sing, it allows your vocal to project farther, I would say, or you can project your voice better. Because let's say, for example, the word cinta. So if you were to sing, if you say cinta instead of cinta, when you say cinta, the R can go as long as you want because you're singing. But when you say cinta, it's just like it just cuts. So cinta, so it doesn't sound as nice. But you would tend to hear people using the sebutan biasa on TV shows, documentaries, interview, and news, because it sounds more natural. That's the main idea. Thirdly, you would tend to use sebutan baku in cultural theatres and performances, because in cultural theatres, again, this is up down to how it sounds like. It's a matter of taste. So some people think that it is more proper to say the standard way of saying things. So then that's why you would use this sort of like sebutan baku instead. And sebutan biasa is used outside of this sort of like area. So for example, in any non-formal setting or any formal setting even, you would still use sebutan biasa when you're speaking to people normally. So for example, if I were to speak to a family member, if I were to speak to a friend or some sort of stranger, I would just use the sebutan biasa. See, I say sebutan biasa, not sebutan biasa. And even at school, with my teachers or with my boss, you would just use sebutan biasa because it's just a more casual way of saying things. And last but not least, if you get the chance to watch a Malay drama or film, which depict classical era or period, for example, like during the Hang Tuah or during the Malacca Sultanate, they would tend to use the sebutan baku, because I think that people have an idea that back then the language tends to sound a bit more Shakespearean, so it has a bit of a baku or like a proper accent. But in most modern Malay dramas or film, we just use sebutan biasa because that's just how we speak Malay nowadays. Although I'm not sure whether back in the days people would use this sebutan baku or sebutan biasa, because sebutan baku is something unheard of, to be honest, because the way Malay is standardized happened actually quite recently in the timeline of the Malay language. So now I am going to say a few sentences. This was basically the same sentence that I had in the first lesson, but right now I'm going to say it in using the sebutan biasa, the common pronunciation. So this is how I would read it. Hai, nama saya Ahmad. Umur saya 20 tahun. Saya berasal dari Kuala Lumpur. Hobi saya menyanyi dan membaca komik. Setiap Khamis saya akan bermain bola sepak bersama rakan-rakan. Esok saya akan ke kelas untuk belajar bahasa Inggeris. So as you can see, it doesn't sound that different if I were to speak using the formal pronunciation, but you can tell that I would say nama instead of nama and saya instead of saya. And words like umur, and also dua, and it becomes puluh instead of puluh, it becomes puluh instead of puluh, and this is tahun. Yeah. So these pronunciations change only at the last syllable, because like I said, in common pronunciation, the last syllables are often unstressed. So you guys can have a go with this. I think I will try to read it again. Hi, nama saya Ahmad, umur saya 20 tahun. Saya berasal dari Kuala Lumpur. Hobi saya menyanyi dan membaca komik. Setiap Khamis saya akan bermain bola sepak bersama rakan-rakan. Esok saya akan ke kelas untuk belajar bahasa Inggeris. So yeah, you can see when I read this, it sounds, when you read Malay using the Sebutan Biasa, it tends to sound fast as well, because I'm used to, saying, using the Sebutan Biasa. So that's how I think it's much more comfortable for me to read things using the Sebutan Biasa. So here's a takeaway point. If you've just started learning Malay, alright, so here's the takeaway for this lesson. If you've just started learning Malay, I would suggest start mastering or actually learning the baku or standard pronunciation first, because what it does, it helps you to spell out words based on the pronunciation alone. For example, if I say saya, you would tend to spell it as S-A-Y-E instead of S-A-Y-A, because the reason why the pronunciation is standardized is so that it makes it easier for people to learn Malay and also spell it out correctly. And also, the reason why I would suggest you to learn the baku pronunciation first is so that native speakers can clearly understand you. If you were to speak baku, Sebutan Baku with the native speakers, they can still understand you. So again, it's not really like a big problem if you don't know how to use the Sebutan Biasa. Although, I have to say, just be aware that Malay speakers commonly use Sebutan Biasa instead of like the baku pronunciation, because in informal writing or text, the spelling also sometimes change to reflect their speech. Like say, for example, if you were to read someone's text in SMS or on a Facebook post or any kind of informal mode of writing, then they tend to change the spelling of some Malay words. For example, you would spell adder, A-D-E-R, instead of ada, just to reflect the sound that Malays tend to say. They would say adder, so they would write it A-D-E-R, adder. And also words like bila becomes bila, and the word juga becomes juga. So that is the whole lesson for today. I hope you have a deeper understanding on why we Malays tend to speak differently than how you are taught at school. And that's it. Thank you very much. Terima kasih dan jumpa lagi.